Can the world number one recover in time for Wimbledon? Jannik Sinner's French Open bid ended in shocking fashion when he collapsed against Juan Manuel Cerundolo, leading by 2 sets and 5-1 in the third. Dizzy, nauseous, and out of energy, the Italian lost in 5 sets. Now, Sinner has undergone medical tests at San Raffaele Hospital in Milan, with doctors investigating whether a virus or other condition caused his sudden collapse. He had already been checked at J Medical in Turin, and further scans may follow. Former US Open finalist Greg Rusedski believes a lingering virus is the likely culprit, while Andre Agassi criticized his preparation. Sinner himself admitted,
"Starting to feel very dizzy, very low of energy, and..."
The world number one is expected to resume training in Monte Carlo, aiming to defend his Wimbledon crown. Do you think Sinner will recover in time to defend his Wimbledon title?
He was leading 6-3, 6-2, 5 games to 1. The match was basically over. And then, in a matter of minutes, Jannik Sinner, the world number one, the man who had demolished everyone on clay all season long, completely fell apart. Heat, exhaustion, cramping, dizziness. He lost 18 of the final 20 games and walked off the court in Paris without even a hint of the dominance he had shown all year. For a brief moment, the tennis world didn't know what to think. Was this a one-time medical incident? A sign of something deeper? Was the best player on the planet actually okay? That was Roland Garros 2026. And now, just weeks later, Jannik Sinner is about to walk out onto the most famous tennis court on earth to defend his Wimbledon title. Let's rewind for a second, because what happened in Paris still doesn't fully make sense when you look at the bigger picture. This is a guy who, before that second-round exit, had been on one of the most dominant runs of tennis we've seen in years. 5 ATP Masters, 1,000 titles in a single season. Indian Wells, Miami, Monte Carlo, Madrid, and Rome. Back-to-back-to-back on clay. His 2026 record entering Roland Garros was historic, and he was the heavy favorite not just to win the French Open, but potentially to run the table through the entire summer. He wasn't just playing well, he was playing at a level that made other top players look like they were operating in a completely different sport. And then Juan Manuel Cerundolo happened. Or rather, the Paris Heat happened, because Sinner himself was clear. It wasn't a tactical collapse, it wasn't a mental breakdown, and it wasn't Cerundolo suddenly unlocking something. It was his body shutting down. Nausea, cramps, a heat stroke that turned a comfortable afternoon cruise into one of the most shocking exits in recent Grand Slam memory. The match was already won. And then it wasn't. The aftermath was serious enough that Sinner flew directly to the San Raffaele Hospital in Milan for comprehensive cardiac and metabolic testing. Doctors went through everything. And the result? Clean bill of health. No underlying condition. His body had simply been pushed beyond its limits during an unusually brutal clay court stretch in extreme heat, with no margin left for anything to go wrong. The physical examination confirmed what his team suspected. This was an isolated incident, not a warning sign. But confirmation doesn't automatically erase concern, and anyone watching that match knew it was going to take more than a medical report to fully move on from what they saw. What happened next is actually really interesting because Sinner's response to all of this tells you a lot about who he is as a competitor. He didn't rush back. He didn't immediately chase a warm-up tournament to prove something. He took a full week off, spent time with family and friends in a completely different environment, stepped away from tennis entirely for a moment to just recover as a human being. And then he went back to work, quietly, methodically, and in a way that raised some eyebrows. While most of the tennis world expected him to head straight to grass to rebuild his feel for the surface, Sinner went to Monte Carlo and started training on hard courts. With Holger Rune, of all people. Not grass. Hard courts. People started asking questions. Was this a mistake? Was he rushing his preparation? Did his team not have a proper plan in place? The answer, it turns out, was that this was actually a deliberate strategic choice, the same approach that Novak Djokovic popularized during his years of Wimbledon dominance. Going directly from clay to grass is a jarring physical transition. The footwork changes completely. The bounce changes. The body hasn't had time to recalibrate. A few days on hard court acts as a bridge. It resets your movement patterns, rebuilds your rhythm on a faster surface, and prepares your muscles for what grass actually demands without shocking the system the way an immediate transition would. It's a counterintuitive approach, but for elite athletes at this level, it makes complete sense. Sinner has since arrived in London, trained at the All England Club on the actual grass, and will play exhibition matches at the Giorgio Armani Tennis Classic at Hullingham Club right before Wimbledon begins, giving him competitive match rhythm without the pressure and consequences of an official tournament. It's not a traditional preparation, but nothing about this build-up has been traditional. Speaking to Vogue ahead of the tournament, Sinner was remarkably candid. He acknowledged exactly where he stands heading into the fortnight. No match play on grass in over a year. No official warm-up tournaments on the surface. First round at Wimbledon essentially functioning as match adaptation rather than a true competitive statement. He's not pretending those factors don't exist. What he is doing is framing them within a larger picture. The extra weeks gained from his early Paris exit were used for extended, high-intensity training sessions that he says his body genuinely needed after the relentless clay court grind. He describes his physical and mental state as the best it's been in months. And crucially, he seems to have let go of the Roland Garros result rather than carrying it into London as unfinished business or unresolved trauma. The competitive landscape at Wimbledon this year is also worth noting, because the draw looks significantly different than anticipated. Carlos Alcaraz, the one player who, over the past 2 years, has consistently made Sinner work the hardest, has withdrawn due to a wrist injury. His absence doesn't make Wimbledon easy, but it does remove the single opponent who has beaten Sinner at Grand Slam level in recent memory and fundamentally reshapes the upper half of the draw. Novak Djokovic remains. The grass court specialists remain. Alexander Zverev, fresh off his Roland Garros title, arrives with momentum and confidence. But the field looks more navigable for Sinner than it has in years. And yet, the questions remain. Not because of anything Sinner has said or done wrong, but because what happened in that Paris match planted a seed of doubt that only match play can fully address. Can his body handle the physical demands of a 2-week Grand Slam in the heat of a London summer? Will the opening rounds be rough before he finds his rhythm? And if so, can he survive that adjustment period against opponents who've been playing on grass for weeks? Is the medical clearance from Milan genuinely the full story? Or is there something about his physical resilience that we don't yet fully understand? These are the things that make watching Jannik Sinner at Wimbledon 2026 genuinely compelling, not just as a title defense, but as a story about what happens when the most dominant player in the world goes through his most vulnerable moment and then has to immediately prove it didn't change anything. Legends build their legacy in exactly these kinds of moments. When doubt is loudest, when questions feel most justified, when the path back to dominance isn't guaranteed, that's when we find out who someone really is. Wimbledon starts on the 29th. Sinner steps onto center court with his title, his #1 ranking, and now, for the first time all season, a real question mark hanging over him. And honestly, that might make this the most interesting Grand Slam he's ever